Today, let's learn about handweaving.net's newest subscriber feature for creating amalgamation drafts. Amalgamation is a special technique developed by weaver Alice Schlein, where draft's threading can be reformulated and added to the original threading to produce a beautiful and more complex draft than the original with the same tie-up. So let's look at creating our first amalgamation. We'll start with draft number 53114. There it is. So we can click this new button that says Amalgamation at the top, and we go to the Amalgamation Editor, where an amalgamation is created instantly. So you may be wondering why we went from 8 shafts on the previous page for the original draft to 16. And that's because the tie-up on amalgamation drafts is often repeated in either direction, both to make it square and to alter the size of the tiles within the amalgamation. And I'll show you what I mean by that. So right now it's repeated 2 times, so if we switch it to 1, it'll get smaller, and this one doesn't look good smaller. If we make it 3, it gets even larger, and if we make it 4, it gets even bigger than that. So I'll put it back to 2. Now sometimes the numbers of repeats available to expand are limited because the draft is very big when it comes in, and there are limits to what can be done practically as a weaver and also in a computer web interface. So you won't always see 2 through 4 here. Sometimes you'll see 1 and 2 or 1, 2, and 3, and sometimes the expand option isn't available at all because the draft coming in was so big that it's not practical to do that here. So just keep that in mind. Alright, so the draft's original threading in an amalgamation comes first. It's here. And then what's called an amalgamation threading is added after that, and it's right here. And then this one, the threadings are repeated, so the original is here, and the amalgamation again is here. And if you look at the treadling, it's the same way. The original threading's here, and then we've got the amalgamation threading that was added, the original again, and one more time the amalgamation again. And if you don't want the threadings repeated and you just want one unit of the pattern, you can uncheck this box, then you only see 1, or you can check it again and see 2. So you may be wondering, well, I had an 8-shaft pattern to begin with, and I have an 8-shaft loom, so what am I going to do with this 16-shaft pattern that was made for me? I don't want that. I can't work with it. Well, you don't have to, because you can always, once the amalgamation is done, compact the draft down to the original number of shafts and treadles. And when that's the case, this button's here, and if you click it, it'll remove all the duplicate rows and columns in the tie-up, and that results in a draft with the same exact numbers of shafts and treadles as the original. So amalgamation never increases the size of the tie-up. You'll see it increased here as the drafts are produced, but you can always get back to the original by clicking that compact button. Alright, so let's look very quickly at how the amalgamation threadings are formed. You can use the buttons next to this satin base here to cycle through various threadings to see the ones that you like. So as I click the right button here, it's going to the next size of amalgamation threading. And if I click the left button, it goes to the previous size. So the technique here is just to click through these until you find one that you like. And I happen to really like this one. A satin base of 5 produces a really pretty amalgamation. So actually, let's make that bigger. Let's do an expansion of 3 in the tie-up, and we'll choose 5 again. Look at that. That's beautiful. Okay, now we can compact it back down to 8 shafts. That's cool. Alright, so if we download this right now, you will get exactly what's shown here. So if we didn't compact it and you downloaded it, you would have gotten that original with lots of shafts. But after compacting, if you download it, you will get exactly what's shown here, so with 8 shafts and 8 treadles. So to form the amalgamation threading, what you do is take the draft's original threading and then a satin that fills the tie-up, a satin tie-up, and a straight threading, and then you take the drawdown that results from that and you put it in as the threading. So if we uncompact this one, there we go, and you look at this threading right here, it's this drawdown here flipped upside down. So 0, 0, treadle 0, shaft 0 is right here. And in the draft it's right here. But that pattern in the drawdown is exactly that pattern in the amalgamation threading. So that's all there is to it. That's how those are formed. And there are different options that are available. So at the bottom of the amalgamation page, there's a reference to Alice Schlein's website. This describes where to go get more information on this technique if you want to know in great detail how it works. Alice has got certain options for producing these satins that she considers valid, and the implementation here actually has a few more. So a few of the ones that aren't valid, and by not valid I mean they produce such long floats that you would never weave them. I discovered while producing this that if you turn this draft, they actually produce really beautiful results. So if you get Alice's monograph and you read it, and then you're trying to figure out, well, how come there's more options here? That's the reason. I've added more. And so it's a little bit of an extension of her technique, but I think it produces really amazing results, so that's why it's here. All right, so let's cycle through a few more and just see how these look. That's kind of a neat one. So there are a ton of amalgamations that are possible for any draft. Now this is one that's not really valid. No one's going to weave that. The floats are too long. And if you look up here, as you're working on an amalgamation draft, it shows how long the floats are, and if any of them are longer than 7, they're shown in red. Just so that you know, hey, there's a long one, I may or may not want that, and it catches your eye right away. So a few more things about the controls. The size right here, all this does is change the view size. So if you have a draft and you want to zoom in on it, you can move that slider to the right. And if you want to zoom out, you can move it to the left. Okay, let's look at a few more things. At the bottom, the original draft is shown here. And this is mainly for reference. But it's also so that you can shift the tie-up in that if you want to. A few drafts are not centered, or perhaps you want to shift them left and right, or even rotate the tie-up, and these controls will let you do those things. Commonly, the tie-up will work just fine the way it is and you won't need to do this, but if you do, you can use these controls. So watch, if I shift the tie-up up, it will shift the pattern in the draft to the left. And if I shift it down, it'll shift it back to the right, and it also changes it. It's actually changing everything about the amalgamation draft when you do this. So, and you can also, if you want to, alter this, the draft that was used to create the satin threading for it. So you can shift, again, the tie-up for it, you can shift it left and right, and if you look, you can see that everything in the draft that we produced is moving when you do that. So the changes are taken into account right away. So you can shift it up, right, down, and left, and you can also rotate the tie-up too. Now if we rotate that one, it produces a draft that's not weavable, but not all of them are that way. Okay, so I think that's most of the basic controls. Let's, just for fun, do a few more amalgamations. So let's go back to the same draft that we just did, 53114. And this time, instead of clicking the amalgamation button right away, I'm going to click View, and I'm going to straighten the threading and the treadling. Now that gives us a 10 shaft pattern, not an 8, but it can be compacted back to 8 later. But it gives us different options when we do the amalgamation. So remember, if the View menu for any draft has options to straighten or convert to point threading or treadling, you can choose those before you do the amalgamation, and you'll get different results. So this is really important. Sometimes the results are far better. In fact, this particular one has some really beautiful amalgamations that are possible when you do this. So let's just cycle through a few of these and you can look at them. That one's pretty neat. I really like this one. And if you look at the floats, they're only 5 each, so it's very weavable. Let's make it a little bit bigger. Go back to 5 here. Whoops, or maybe it was 3. Nope, it was 4. There. So you can see that I'm getting quite different results than when I use the original threading. And even though we started with the 10 shaft pattern because we straightened it, if we click this compact button, we go back down to 8 because that's what the original draft was. So you can always get to the number of shafts in the original regardless of what you do to the threading or treadling or tie up before you form the amalgamation. All right, let's make a couple more. So this time let's choose draft number 51841. There it is. Now that one's already straight, so if I click view, I can't do anything to it. It's straightened already. So all we can do is amalgamation. So let's do that. And we start off with one that's not valid, but if we click through these, we come to some that are, and that's kind of a cool one there. That one's neat too. This one would probably look better with more repeats, so let's try that. Let's do 3 repeats. There, that's neat. A lot of these drafts don't look good until you get enough repeats that your eye can see all the patterns. So like 1 unit of the repeat isn't typically enough, although it can be. So play with this to see what you like the best. That's pretty neat. Okay, we can compact that one back down to 8 shafts too. All right, let's do a couple more. So this time let's do draft number 17957. Now you may be wondering how this is going to work. This one doesn't have a square tie-up. So how can you do an amalgamation which has to be trampes writ even though the tie-up is rectangular? Well, what will happen is that the tie-up is going to be duplicated to make it rectangular. So this one's 8 by 16, so all you have to do is take this part, put it again up here, and then change the threading so that it'll match. So watch. The amalgamation editor knows how to do that. So it did exactly that. It just duplicated the tie-up to make it square, and now we can work with it. So this one's starting off with only 1 repeat because it's a little bit bigger than the other one. So let's see what that looks like. That's kind of neat. Let's go back and set that to 2 and see what there. That's neat. That one's really neat. Okay, now we can squish it back down again to 8 by 16 because that was the size of the original type that we started with. Okay, let's look at maybe just one more. How about 34763? That's a pretty pattern. 16 shafts here. Okay, with this one, let's try an amalgamation just like it is, and let's try one with it straightened too. So first we'll do just like it is. And let's try a few of these and see what they look like. That's pretty. That one's interesting too. Okay, let's go back. And this time we'll try it straightened first. So we'll go to view, straight threading, straight treadling. Now that results in a 32 shaft pattern. So we'll do our amalgamation with that. And this time the expansion box is gone because the draft would get so big that it's not practical to have that. So here's an example of one where that disappears, but it's already big enough that it probably doesn't need to be expanded to look good. So let's click through till we find one we like. Ooh, that's gorgeous. Look at that. Let's do a couple more. That's pretty too, but it's not practical because the floats are so long. That one's interesting. Let's go back to, I think it was 5. That was one. Yeah, that's the one that I like the best. Let's check the floats. It looks like they're all short. One thing you can do too on all of these, if you want to see what the back side of the fabric is going to look like, the front's shown by default, but you can click the show reverse box and that will invert the tie up to show you the back side of the fabric. In this case it's pretty similar but just different colors. Okay, and lastly down at the bottom there's a reference to Alice Schlein's Amalgamation Monograph, and if you want to learn more about this I highly recommend that you go get that. She tells in great detail how the whole technique works, how you can do it with any weaving software, not just what's here. So that's amalgamation. So go and make something beautiful. Thanks for watching.